All right, so today I want to look at 5 overstable fairway drivers. Others would, some say control drivers, others say distance drivers. They're all going to be under 10 speed. They're all going to be 9 speed. And so we're going to take a look at the first run Captain's Raptor, a Champion Firebird from the Armory, a Scepter, a Longbowman, and one of the new Discmania Mystery Box FD3, C-Line FD3s. And so what we're going to look at, for me, in this slot in the bag, I need 2 different types of discs. I need one that's going to push forward for as long as possible, but still have a reliable stability that's not just going to flip over easily, and if it does, it's going to come back, but it's going to push for a while before it gets into the fade part of its flight path. And then I need one that it's going to be a bit more overstable than that. If I really need to hang it out over some dangerous area, or there's a headwind and I still need a reliable forehand. And so I want to see what these are, where they might fit, and how each one flies. So let's check it out. First, we'll talk about how they feel. So first, this Captain's Raptor, and the difference I start to notice with, at least just in how they feel, is that the Scepter and the Longbowman feel a bit more, they don't feel as dense. They're the same weight, feels just lighter, like it's gonna be a little less overstable. And so maybe even without throwing or testing any, field testing any, you'd be able to know which ones are the more stable ones and which ones are not. And so we'll see how they fly. Like when it comes to the Champion plastic and the Firebird, it feels a bit slippery, a bit slippy after a while, but I know that Champion plastic can also beat in and get also straighter. The C-Line, this Italian C-Line, feels really, really good. Just like all the other ones, even the ones I've had that have been more beat in, it still stays pretty gummy, pretty flexible. The Captain's Raptor, I'd say, is right between the way the Champion plastic feels and that C-Line. It's not as slippery as the Champion plastic, but it's not as grippy as the C-Line. And then this VIP plastic, it feels a little more grippier than the Champion plastic, but again, this disc in particular, the Longbowman, just feels a bit lighter in the hand, so it feels like I have more like control of it. And then the Scepter, the iBlend plastic, and so that one, surprisingly, for being more of an S-Line type plastic, it's not much grippier than even the VIP. So we'll see how they go. This first hole, it was a 320-foot downhill. It was a backhand 320. I went with the Longbowman. You'll see I immediately put it on Anheuser, and it's not stable enough to fight out, especially like with it going downhill with gravity. But then we get into the Scepter, and that one, you'll notice it does push pretty far into that tree on the right, and then fades out out of view of the camera. We get into the Raptor. That one, really quick, you see it right away. It doesn't hold its flat line for as long before it wants to start to fight down into the ground. And I began to find the same thing with the Champion Firebird and the C-Line FD3. Both of those on flat will push a little further than the Raptor, but I didn't find that they pushed as far as the Scepter did before they fought out. So they're a little less stable so far, even on a downhill. And then I wanted to do, because this is what I primarily use these for, is a forehand shot. And so again, I needed to carry out to that tree and then fade into the basket. And so this is where you'll start to see the Longbowman. It flips up a little bit of hyzer, flips up, even turns a little, but holds out for a really long time before you see it go into the fade part of the flight path. The Scepter, pretty much the same exact thing happens. It still pushes pretty far on a really decently low line. So maybe if you don't have the strongest of forehands, so far the Longbowman and Scepter seem to be a good fit. But then you'll immediately see the Champion Firebird, I threw it on the same line with the same amount of effort, and you see it immediately fight out of that straight path, out and to the right a lot quicker. And so I threw the Raptor just slightly harder, and this one, being even more overstable, immediately fights out even sooner. And then we get into the FD3, and so I had to give it a lot more to push it straight for longer, and then it just faded nice and reliably into that basket. And then about a 250-foot downhill approach type shot. I want to see how they handle pushing downhill on a forehand and not turning over and still fighting back into its fade. And so with the long bowman, you see, same idea. It pushes all the way into that tree for a really long time and then kind of dumps out softly. And the scepter, same idea, throwing it the right way, it would have flown exactly the same and then fought right into it. It was a bit more to the right than it should have been. We got into more of these beefier ones, and when I threw the Firebird and the Raptor, I tried to keep them out even wider so that it would push out, knowing they're a bit more overstable, so they would fight right, and I'd have to throw them a lot harder. And even giving these a lot more power behind them, they didn't have a tendency to turn over even on that steep of it. I threw it out even wider, trying to give it enough time and room to fight back, but knowing that they're more overstable, they're not gonna swing. They're just gonna kind of want to like dive down into the right. The next shot is about 180 foot, just flare skip around that tree. And so with the long bowman, it being more understable, I put it out on hyzer, expecting it to hit the floor and skip, but really it just held that hyzer for a really long time and was swinging and not really dying down to the ground. I tried to correct that with the scepter. It needed probably a little less power because this still pushed further before it caught edge and took a flare. And then I tried to overcorrect it with this Firebird, and I tried to not give it a lot. You see, it has the ability to do it. I just didn't push it out hard enough to go around the tree, but it had the same idea. But I started to correct it more with this Captain's Raptor. I tried to put it on steep hyzer, push it out, and you see it just hits and flares to the left. And then again with the FD3, I corrected everything I didn't do with these two overstable ones, and I pushed it out on hyzer, and that has the flare I think that the Raptor and the Champion Firebird would have when thrown right. So, and then I did a 270 foot hang it out wide left and see how far it's gonna swing and fade to the right on a forehand. And so same idea with the scepter and the long bowman. They push out far like they're supposed to, but they have the ability to push out really far for a really long time and then go into their fade at the end. And so again, for maybe lower forearm arm speeds, a disc like this that'll push for longer will give you the more desired effect of an overstable fairway that you're looking for. And then we get into these three overstable ones, and the same idea. The Raptor, I tried to hang it out wide left, but because it wants to dump pretty hard, pretty quick, it doesn't push far enough to reach the basket, which is not a bad thing. It just depends on what you're wanting the disc for. And the Firebird, it was the same flight as the Raptor. I just didn't hang it out wide enough at all, but it had pretty much the same flight and just finishes out early. And then the FD3, again, I tried to push this one even farther out left, and you see it does push out far reliably and with little to no turn at all, and then just fights back into the hill where I'm wanting it to land. And then one of the final shots, I started with the scepter, expecting after all these shots that this one would push the furthest. You'll see it pushes way out there and gets even behind that picnic table, and then just skips off the concrete and then down into the bowl where you'd expect. A little further would have been preferable. I did the long bowman next. It does push out as far as it needs to go, but you'll see it kind of just cross the screen because I didn't push it out far enough, but it has the ability to do it. Then we got into the Raptor, and it goes, but then dumps out too early, so you see it kind of hit the front edge of the hill on the front right side of that camera. And then the Firebird, being a little less stable than the Raptor, but more stable than the other two, I pushed it out a little harder, and I just didn't keep it right enough. And then you see it just kind of cut across the screen. And then lastly, I had the FD3. It goes out, and then after pushing out far enough, it fades reliably into that landing area a little earlier than I would have liked, but then skips down right where you're wanting to be putting. And so my overall thoughts, for me, if I was gonna do more of a mixed bag, then these two would be more of the less overstable, more like they just feel more workable in the hand, not as super just beefy and fight to the ground type discs. They're gonna push further for your backhand, and even your forehands might, and if you're throwing over 320 on a forehand, these might actually need to be a flip up kind of push forward forehand. If you're 300 or less, these should be pretty sufficient if 300 is your max. And then there's the super overstable ones. I think for me, the Captain's Raptor, it doesn't have enough glide and distance for me to need this kind of slot in the bag. This is what I have more of my more overstable DD3 or even an adder for, that are going to be able to handle a lot of torque and get a lot more distance out of it, whereas this can handle a lot, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to push and carry and glide very far. But that's okay if that's not what you're looking for. It's super overstable and super reliable, and these two fly very, very similar. So if you're a fan of the Champion Firebird and the overstability of it, the reliability, the fact that it's not going to turn over on you much, then these new C-Line FD3s and even the Metal Flake ones from the European Open, these were really, really nice. And of course, I think that these just feel better in the hand. And so for me, my overstable spot in the bag, like into the wind, that's what this FD3 is for. You could substitute that in for the Firebird or the Raptor. And then my more understable forehand is going to be my C-Line PD, which you could replace with a Glow Firebird, a Long Bowman, or a Scepter. And so you let me know what you guys think, what other overstable fairway drivers you've thrown or find to be really reliable, especially ones into the wind, but ones that can push. I find those to be the rarer ones for me to find, is the ones that can push really far but still have enough stability for you to be able to trust it to not turn over too bad at the end. And so yeah, let me know what you guys think, and thanks for watching.